I bought my first rental property as a teenager, so don't go look up an outdated video on how to analyze rental properties anywhere else. I will give you a full guide on how to analyze rental property and go over real life examples with you, because obviously you can't make your first deal without knowing if it's a good deal or not. If you want to use the rental property analysis sheet that my millionaire mentor shared with me back when I was buying my first property, you can get it at the link in my description. So first, let's actually take a look at the sheet. If you take a look at the sheet, you see annual property operating data, which is the data we go over when we're trying to figure out if the deal is a good deal or not. So starting at the top, we're going to go straight to the figures, because this top information here is not necessarily what we're looking at when we're first going on this sheet. First, we're going to put down figures. So you have number one, potential rental income. This is all the potential rent that you can get from a property. Now, there's two ways to do an analysis sheet. You can have the property as it's already performing, meaning you use the rents that it's already being rented out for. Or if you're a buyer like me who's looking to get a deal, you're going to do two analysis. You're going to do one analysis with the rent that they are paying already to see what it's worth if they stay at the same rents. And then you're going to do another analysis where you increase the rents to where the market rents are at, or what people will pay for that type of property. And then you will raise the rents once you get in the property. So doing two analysis helps you work through those numbers. Moving on to number two, you have your vacancy expense. What percent are you setting aside for vacancy? That's typically your vacancy rate. If you don't know this number, more than likely as a beginner investor, you won't. Make sure you look online. ChatGPT helps. Look online to find what the vacancy rate is in your area, and then to be conservative, use that rate. And then number three, you have effective rental income, which is the amount of income minus the vacancy. And then you add the other income, which can be vending machine income. It can be washer and dryer machine, people that use the coin washer or the card washer dryer in the basement of an apartment building. Once you add up that amount of money to see what the additional income is, you'll add that plus the effective rental income, and then that'll be your total income or gross operating income for number five. Now let's get into the operating expenses. So for expenses, first you have real estate taxes. So real estate taxes, obviously, every property that you are going to buy, you're going to have to pay taxes on. The government is going to assess the value of the property and make you pay taxes to the city or the county, wherever you're located. It's different where you're located, but they'll make you pay taxes on the property. So make sure you calculate that. Secondly, you can go into the personal property tax, which some places, not where I'm from in Illinois, but some states actually require you to pay a personal property tax for any property that is not a part of the actual building. For example, they may have you pay for, let's just say, an oven if it was kept in a property, because technically in certain states they consider that a form of income that you got, because you got the appliance without having to pay for it. So make sure you know what state you're living in, whether you include that in your analysis or not. Then you have the property insurance. If you're a beginner investor, you don't know what your property will insure for. Two good ways of finding this out is asking someone who's actually in the insurance industry. If you're in networking groups, find people you can actually talk to who are in the industry who will give you a good answer. Or you can go ahead and ask ChatGPT. Once again, be resourceful, be conservative. Right now, you're going to be trying to learn how to do an analysis, not to have all the numbers right. Then you go on to off-site management. Typically, property management companies in the area can charge anywhere from 8 to 10%. Always be conservative with your numbers so you have wiggle room. I usually use 10% for maintenance, not maintenance, but management. And then payroll. Unless you're somebody that's starting out doing giant buildings, like commercial buildings, 200, 300 units, where you're going to have to pay someone to be on staff all the time, don't worry about payroll. You won't need payroll. Expenses and benefits, same thing. You won't have to pay benefits for employees that you don't have unless you're working with extremely big apartment complexes. And then you have taxes, worker compensation, same thing, don't worry. Repairs and maintenance. This is a very important one that beginners get wrong. Depending on the size and how old your building is, your repairs and maintenance can vary. For older buildings that the last owner didn't keep up very well, your repairs and your maintenance are going to be really high. But for like a newer building, your repairs and maintenance, when you get it, will probably be pretty low. So it's hard to necessarily come up with a value that is 100% accurate, even for experienced investors. So what I go with in my area typically for maintenance is 10% if the property is okay. If it's bad, I'm gonna go somewhere in the area of 15, sometimes even 20%, depending on how bad the property is. Then getting into utilities. Make sure you understand when you're looking at this property, you got to see whether the tenant is paying utilities or you're paying utilities. Sometimes the tenant will pay their water, but also you'll have your main water as well that you have to pay for the tenants, because there's like common areas where they have sinks and things like that in the basement. More than likely, if you do supply washing and drying machines, you'll be paying for the water that the tenants actually use. So be careful with that. And then once you get past utilities, you will have accounting and legal. Depending on if you're buying this under a business, a LLC, or S corp, whatever you buying the property under, or if you're just doing it in your name, understand that more than likely, even if you're doing it under your name, you're gonna want to have an accountant that understands real estate investors and filing their taxes, because I have an accountant that specifically does work with real estate investors. So you want to make sure that you do set aside some extra money to upgrade your accountant. There's no more using TurboTax or any of these easy softwares. Make sure you have an accountant that actually wants to work for your best interest. Make sure you get all the tax benefits that come along with real estate. And then lastly, you have license and permits if you need any to do any work, advertising, supplies, miscellaneous. And then once we get there, you get to the bottom where you have total operating expenses. You subtract the total operating expenses from the gross operating income, and you get your net operating income. That right there is your net operating income. I'm not going to go too much into these sections yet. Mainly when you're a beginner, I want you to focus on number 1 through 30. And then we'll talk about a few things after that. Now that we understand this, I'm going to go into some details that are very important for beginner investors that will save you a lot of time. The first thing I want to go over is percentages. And why do we track percentages? If you can see on the sheet here, you have the name of an expense like property insurance, and then you have a percentage of gross operating income. As a percentage of gross operating income is important, because let's say, for example, you invest in your state, in your area. You want to get very familiar with what percentage of your gross operating income expenses typically are. Let's say in Chicago, this is a made up number, so don't think this is true. But let's just say in Chicago, a property that sells that has an income of $100,000 gross operating income, taxes are typically 15% of $100,000, which is $15,000. But let's just say I go to a different city, because when you go to different cities, different states, all of the percentages change. So if I go look at another property in Chicago and I see that this property for $100,000, the tax is only $5,000, that probably means that my taxes are going to go up when I purchase it, or something is wrong with the taxes that I need to check out. Because if your taxes go up $10,000 on a property and you didn't account for that, you're going to lose out on a lot of money. So make sure you're paying attention to percentages. Try to stick in one area when you start to analyze deals so that you can get used to the expenses in that area. That's why a lot of times investors that you'll meet that are local, they will be very well versed with the area and what type of expenses look like on a building. So they do the numbers in their head really fast. That's why percentages are important. And then lastly, make sure that the thing that you remember when it comes to analyzing rental property is also to assure that you don't leave out any of the numbers. I know you don't know how to get all of these, but let's get into the example now so I can actually show you how you would get all these numbers for a deal. So, okay, so let's find a property really quick. I'm gonna let's go to Zillow. And I'm gonna go somewhere random in Illinois just because I want to show you guys everything. So let's go to Zillow. Let's look in Chicago because that is where I'm from. Okay. So I'm going to go into home type. Let's select multifamily, because if you listen to any of my other videos, you'll hear me say that I like multifamily investing. Doesn't mean that you can't invest in homes or anything like that, but I prefer to invest in multifamily investments. So let's find here. I guess we can look at some of these extremely expensive apartments in Chicago. So let's go to this one. So I see there's an 8-bed, 3-bath at 2629 North California Avenue for sale right now. And if I scroll down, let's see if they have any of the information that they usually have. This is the price history. See what it sold for. Scroll down some more. Okay. Okay, so you see in the description here that this is a 3-unit building. So we're going to already go to the top. I'm going to put Chicago triplex. Chicago triplex. And I'm not going to fill out any of this yet, really, because it doesn't really matter yet. And I'm going to make sure I get you straight value in this video and not necessarily have to, BS you. So let's look at potential rental income. You see here it says there's 3 legal units, 2 3-bed, 1-baths, and 1 1-bedroom, 1 bathroom. So how do I find what this property will rent for? Because I can't find what it's rented for on a site like Zillow most of the time unless they give you averages. What I will do is I'll go to Rentometer. Rent calculator. Here we go. So what I'll do is I'll go to Rentometer and I will put in the address of the place. So let's go up here. Copy and paste this address. Let's say $1,500 rent for 3-bed, 1-bath. Not gonna really put all of that in there. So the average rent in this area for a 3-bed, 1-bath is $2,487. Let's keep that $2,487. I'll make sure I remember that. And then let's go back. And then select a 1-bedroom, 1-bath for that area too. Average rent, $2,000. So all we're doing is saying, okay, I can get this property rented out for $2,500 for 2 bedrooms. That's for the 2 3-bed, 1-bath units. That's $5,000 a month. And then the other one rented for $2,000 just to keep the numbers nice. 5,000, 6,000, 7,000. And then 7,000 times 12. Because, sorry, I am not going to be doing this in my head. 7,000 times 12 equals 84,000. So I know that 84,000 is my potential income. So I'm going to look. What is the vacancy rate in Chicago? AI right here. There is a homeowner and a rental vacancy rate of 6.5%. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put 7% for the vacancy rate. And then now that I know that, I'm going to say, what is this times 7%. 5,880. So that's just making sure that we put away $5,880 a year to make sure that we can cover when a unit does go vacant, whether that's repairs or paying your mortgage, things like that. Then we're going to get into the additional income. I don't believe on the Zillow site they said that there was any, laundry. They said it's shared laundry in the basement. If I go to the photos, usually what I'll look at is to see, okay, is there a picture of the basement where I can see the laundry? Because if there is, I can see if it's coin operated. But you see right here in this picture, it's not coin operated. This is something that they have water to. So if it's shared, that means that more than likely the landlord is paying for it. So I'll go ahead here and put water as a utility, because I know that with that not being shared, with that being shared, I know that the unit landlord is more than likely paying for that. And just so you know, I can scroll here. I can go ahead and see the layout. And then we can get back to this because I know there's no additional income. That will be 0%. And now the gross operating income we know is 84,000 is minus 84,000 equals 78,120. 78,120. So now that I have this amount, this is our gross operating income. Let's look at taxes. So the biggest thing when looking at taxes, you see that I was actually able to go ahead on this property and they actually put the taxes here. So if I scroll down here, they put the tax amount was $13,208. So I'm going to use that for this example. Real estate taxes are $13,208. In order to find out what percentage, you do 13,208 divided by 78,120. That is 17%. Let's put 17%. That is 17% of our gross operating income. There is no personal property tax in Illinois, like I said. Property insurance. Property insurance done went up. So to be conservative on a property like this in Chicago, I'm just gonna put 4,000 to be pretty conservative. I'll say 4,000 for replacement cost of that building. Not exactly sure if it'll be higher or lower, but that's just me doing a guesstimate really quickly. Once again, you can ask ChatGPT. For the purposes of this video, I'm not. Offsite management. I tell you, I always put 10% for offsite management. So what's 10%? What we'll do is 78,120 times 10% equals $7,812 is what I'll put in a budget every year to make sure that a property manager can handle all the toilets, tenants, and termites, all the stuff people don't want to deal with when it comes to rental property. I'll put that aside so that the property manager can get paid. And then for the 4,000 to put a percentage on that, I'll just do 4,000 divided by 78,120. And that is 5%. You guys see that I'm not putting exact percentages, but I can put exact percentages if I want to. I'm doing the quick rough numbers for the sake of the video, giving you an in-depth way on how we actually analyze rental property as investors. No payroll, no expenses, no taxes, no repairs and maintenance, utilities. I saw that we have to more than likely pay water, but what I didn't see is if the landlord or the tenant is going to pay certain expenses. So let me read this. I don't see that the the realtor put in here whether there was going to be the tenant's responsibility or the landlord's responsibility to pay these utilities. So this is what I usually do. I'll open a new tab and I'll go to Google Street View and I will copy this address. Because ultimately we want to be able to look at the property and see, okay, what do the water hookups look like? And this is pretty, not advanced stuff, but for a beginner, this may be something you never really would have thought to do. So not even looking up Google Street View. Let me just put in the address here. Once I put in the address, I'll be able to go to Street View from here. And I can actually look at the property close up if I want to and see, okay, are they paying water? Are they paying, anything? Right now, I can't see much. So luckily thing about Chicago is that Chicago has alleys. And typically, since Chicago has alleys, they might actually let me go in the alley to the back of the property and see if there was, oh man, it just took me back. Give me 1 second to get to the back of the property for you guys. Boom. So on the back of the property, I can't necessarily see if we are paying for the tenant's electricity or their gas. So what I'll typically do in a scenario like this, I'll make sure that I account for gas and electric anyway, just to be conservative with my numbers just in case. So let's just say put gas here, put electric here. I'm using rough estimates of what I think that the expenses would be on this building. So let's just say for electric, for all 3 units, let's say electric would be $350 a month. So $350 a month times 12. On average, 4,200. Let's say gas, 250. 3,000 for all units, okay? And then let's say water, let's say water is 300 times 12. And let's, just to be conservative, let's put 4,000. So now all I have to do is get those percentages. Okay, and now that I got these percentages, and I am looking at accounting and legal now. So accounting and legal, just be conservative. Let's say we did purchase it in a, LLC, and we needed all types of stuff done by our accountant for us, or our lawyer, or our tax attorney, or business attorney, whatever. Let's just put for accounting and legal, let's put $1,000. Put $1,000. That'll be 1%. So now that we've added up all the expenses, because I skipped an expense, repairs and maintenance. Like I said, for a building like this, let's just look at it. It looks like it was freshly done on the inside. The basement looks fully finished, but you never know until you really get in there if it's perfect. So I'll just be conservative, say it's probably an average building that's pretty well maintained. I'll put 10% for repairs and maintenance. So 10% of 78,120 is 7,812. Now we have all the expenses for this building. So first what we'll do is get the total operating expenses, which is 10%, 14%, 15%, 25%, 25%, 35%, 57%, So 57% of the gross operating income is the expenses. So what I can do instead of adding all that up to find it out easier, I'll just put 78,120 times 57%, and that's giving me 44,528. And then for the net operating income, I'll just subtract that from the gross operating income, and that'll be $33,592. And then the percentage of that will be 43%. Now, your question is, how do we do all this? I didn't look at any cash flow. I didn't look at anything. A cash flow analysis is easy. If you want to do a simple cash flow analysis to figure out how much money you're probably making, I say probably because gurus do not tell you everything that you need to know about real estate investing in terms of calculating your expenses. This is an analysis you do to figure out if the property is worth buying at the asking price that they ask for. So how do you do that? What you do is you take the purchase price and divide it by the cap rate. The reason you take the purchase price and divide it by the cap rate is so you can figure out if the deal will still be profitable with the price that you're going to pay for it. And for people that don't know what a cap rate is the return that you would make on your investment if you bought the property cash. So if you bought the property for cash at the amount that it was listed for, then you would be able to get a 8% return if the cap rate was 8%. But for a deal to work, the rule of thumb is that investors have told me and that I personally use is in order for the deal to work, your cap rate has to be 2% above the interest rate on your loan. So if the loan that you're going to get is a 7% interest rate, your cap rate has to at least be 9% for that deal to work and for that deal to be profitable for you to buy at the price that they're asking or whatever price you're willing to offer. So make sure you understand. Looking at the numbers, you can see that once we use 9%, because the real estate market right now has around 6.5% loans. So let's just say 7% is what we'll get. And then you put a 9% cap rate, the price is $373,244. And there is absolutely no way in the world that this property is going to go for that amount unless you lowball them like crazy and they're really trying to get rid of this property. So you can see after you do a few deals and you look around the internet and the real estate market, you'll see a lot of deals are overpriced. But doing this makes you understand what price you can buy a deal at. There are still markets in the United States, in different states. In your state, there's different areas that are different than others where you'll find some deals will work for what they're asking on the market, but other deals won't. So make sure you understand the difference between the numbers and the properties that you're analyzing, so you can actually make sure that the deals that you buy are profitable. Don't worry about these other things that are telling you how to calculate cash flow month by month. Cash flow is one thing when it comes to real estate, but knowing if the price of the property is a good price for you to purchase at, you can do that in this way using an annual property operating data sheet. So if you guys really want help to figure out like the numbers and figuring out what numbers you should use, and you want to keep analyzing property, you want to keep doing it. And if you ever want a group or to collab with people or to get education, I can always connect you with the education community I became a part of when I was 17 to learn real estate so that I could buy my first property at 19. And also I can make sure that you can join a community that I'll set up for free where we just go over numbers, talk real estate, and I help walk people through for free in as much of a capacity I can do that in. So definitely link in bio to subscribe to my newsletter to stay up to date with the free community I'm coming out with. And thanks for watching this video. Peace.